6 emergency exits.
Hello, everybody. This is Ron, your captain speaking. We are currently 30,000 feet in the air, and we haven't even left the airport. We just lit the joint. Just kidding, a little pilot humor there. We like to have fun. Our destination today is Casablanca, Morocco. So everyone, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for takeoff. We will be arriving in 6 hours.
7-footers, welcome back to another exciting episode. It's extra special today because the NBA is back, and I'm not alone. I have my partner in crime, Gerard Hester. What is going on, Gerard?
Oh, I'm hanging in there out here in Paris. Just kidding. Not really in Paris, guys. A little virtual background. No, look, I'm maintaining, right? The NBA is back, so a lot to talk about there. There's a lot going on in the world, as you all know. And, I think we're at a moment, and I hope that this moment, is what it could be. And I hope we get the change that we truly want to see in this world. So holding out hope, doing my part. We'll see.
I feel the same here. And we've also had important conversations too. So we will continue to have those as well. But right now, the conversation we need to zero in on is that the NBA is back. They're
Indeed.
Returning to Walt Disney World, AKA the new bubble. And this past week, the league's Board of Governors and the Players Union both approved the new plan by Adam Silver, a 22-team, 8-game wrap-up to the regular season, followed by a possible play-in tournament for the 8th seed and then the playoffs to resume the 2019-20 season. We'll break it down for you guys. They have some COVID rules that they are following as well. And we have 13 teams from the Western Conference, 9 from the East. And there's no surprise there. Obviously, the West is stacked. But just to break it down for you guys, before I give the floor to Gerard, it's a 22 teams that are going to Disney World in Orlando. They're going to finish it off. Now, here's how it's going to go, just in the short, all right? The 16 current playoff teams, they're going to be joined by the Pelicans, Blazers, Suns, Kings, Spurs out of the West, and then the Wizards out of the East, as those squads try to catch up to the 8th seed, as you guys know. And they're going to go there, and they're supposed to be allowed to be in training camp with their teams. And we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. But Gerard, what were your initial thoughts when you heard the NBA was back? Were you excited, or were you a bit nervous?
It was mixed feelings, right? Because you remember on our show and on many other shows, I said the same thing. I was like, we're not seeing basketball again this year. Especially if you're looking at the science and the data. I don't know how we do this. Obviously, no fans involved, and that's clear. But the league and the Players Association got together and figured out this is how they're going to make it happen. And I want to be clear on something. Basketball is very important to our lives, not just professionally from what we do for work, but also for our enjoyment. Like, we're very fortunate in that we get to our passion, or one of our passions is the NBA and sports, and we get to go to these games, cover it. And so from a business standpoint and from a personal standpoint, nothing makes me happier than having basketball back, right? Because it's great. What I am concerned about, though, is how well thought out is this plan? And, look, Adam Silver and Michelle Roberts, NBA commissioner, of course, and the head of the NBPA, are wonderful people. And, I know Michelle, obviously, don't know Adam as well, but they're great people. But what I have to wonder is, there's so much at stake here, and nothing and no one person is ever going to stop the machine that is capitalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
The NBA is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and there's a lot of people that depend on that money. And so much of restarting this season is driven by the money, right? I mean, there's no two ways around it. And what I think here is that the question that Adam and Michelle probably asked themselves is, and when they talked to the right people, that the health people, was, how can we resume our season with the least amount of risk possible, right? Which seems reasonable, right? Of course. But the actual question they probably want to lead with is it actually safe to come back and do this, right? Because there's so many things about what happens if a player tests that we don't know the answers to those questions, right? And there's a lot there, not to mention, we don't know how long you are contagious. We don't know, again, the long-term ramifications of this, not to mention the older population. We always say they are at risk. The NBA's got a lot of people over the age of 60 in it, head coaches, right? I mean, so I just have questions around that.
Exactly. I mean, I think we all do at this point, because piggybacking off of what you said, there's so much about this COVID-19 that we do not know. We don't know, like you said, the long-term effects, how long people are contagious. And then I also think of people too, like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, who have gone through this, recovered, they're well now. But what happens when you go out there full force and you kind of take on a new regimen of exercise? I mean, it attacks the respiratory system. And although Donovan Mitchell was very vocal that he was asymptomatic, you just never know. And, you know, as we go into the different rules that we're hearing from Woj and Shams, who have been breaking different things left and right, we hear that players will receive daily COVID-19 tests, which, pausing right there, just makes me think we were at a shortage, but now we're not. So a lot of people might have questions there. And then, you know, the players are required to follow social distancing rules, and they'll reportedly be allowed to dine at outdoor facilities and things like that. But, you know, you brought up a great point too, and this has been a topic within the media as well, with these older coaches, especially Greg Popovich, Mike D'Antoni, and the list goes on. Now, we have a lot of people speaking out that these coaches should be able to determine their own fate, but do you think the NBA should step in as well to be like, hey, maybe you should not be on the sidelines because this is a disease that is really targeting their age bracket? What is your stance on that?
I mean, that's the thing, right? There's so many things that are questions that are unanswered. And look, again, I want to be clear. I am not attacking Adam Silver or Michelle Roberts at all.
No.
They are doing what they think is best to continue and have this season play. And look, when the players want to play and the owners want them to play and the owners want the games, I understand all that. But what is the data and the science telling you? How safe are you going to be in this bubble? Again, with these older coaches, you were talking about assistant coaches too, Lionel Hollins. There's so many people who this could affect them. Not to mention, how are you guaranteeing nobody's coming in and out of this bubble who isn't supposed to be there, right? Which we talked about before. The other thing, what are the protocols in place if a player ends up testing positive? Are you going to shut the whole league down? Is it?
That's the only thing we're not hearing.
It's not as simple as, okay, we're just going to quarantine that person. No, you got to, everyone who that person was in contact with for the last game now is susceptible to having this virus. Now, of course, you're testing every day and all that, but don't we also know that you can test positive or you can test negative, but be carrying it, and then maybe the next day you have it. But then, okay, what if you have it that day? Then what do you do? But then that person played a game maybe that day. Like what? Like, there's so many sort of like, I don't know, right? And again, I want to be clear. Nothing is going to be zero risk. I understand that. Everyone understands it. There is no such thing as zero risk. I'm just wondering, what was the risk calculus the NBA took into consideration when doing this? That's all. Look, I want basketball. I love basketball. But as you all know, we love the NBA and love this league so much. I don't want something bad to happen. And then the NBA now has a PR nightmare on their hands, and now they're viewed in an extremely negative light by the general public. That's what I don't want. And of course, obviously, people's lives being jeopardized, because this is called a novel coronavirus for a reason. It's novel because we don't know about it, right? There's so much we don't know.
Exactly. You're right. And there is so much we don't know. And, hot spots like New York City, you just mentioned in the beginning of this episode that they're starting phase 1 of reopening. So it seems as though we're moving in the right direction. But like you said, I would hate to see the NBA take a few steps back because maybe certain things weren't figured out. And you raised some really great questions too, because what does happen? What is the emergency protocol in place if a player is to test positive? And that is just fear of the unknown, I guess, that we have right now. I mean, again, I have the utmost faith in Adam Silver and Michelle Roberts that they have thought through every case scenario and this and that. So I feel positive for a return, but I definitely am very nervous. So
there's some trepidation for sure. And I mean, look, and I'm sure Adam and Michelle have trepidation. I'm sure the players do, right? Like that's the thing. And yes, I'm not suggesting we live in a state of fear perpetually and never move forward. Not at all. But Adam did say the data and the science were going to drive the decisions, right? Well, I want to make sure that that's the case and it isn't the money, right? Because look, I also want to be clear about that. I understand the money matters. Of course it matters. It has to matter. That's how this whole apparatus moves. I get it. But I'm just curious again as to how it all unfolds and what are the protocols in place. That again, that's the stuff that we haven't heard. We're getting leaks, bits of information about the play-in tournament and how all that's going to go. Okay, but we have no information about the health side of it. That's the question I have.
Exactly. And I have the same questions as well. And while we wait for those answers, we have received some target dates for the resumption of the season. Nothing is, set in stone just yet, but we do have a few things that we can report here. Now, this is all based off of Woj and Shams. This specifically, these dates are coming from Woj. Training camp, July 9th to the 11th. And then the season, July 31st to October 12th. Free agency, October 18th. And then you roll into the next season for the 2021 training camp as well. What do you think about the dates and the way they decided to do the format? Do you think it is the fairest option?
I think, if you are the 8 seeds in your respective conference, so that would be the Grizzlies in the West, and I want to say Brooklyn in the East. Let me just confirm that. Brooklyn's either the 8 or the 7. Look, the likelihood of you as one of these 8 seeds getting caught by a 9 seed is statistically low, or the Orlando Magic are the 8 seed in the in the Eastern Conference. Right now, the Wizards are 5.5 games behind the Magic. It's highly unlikely the Wizards catch them. So, I think that's fine. Where I may have a little bit of concern, maybe, is Portland and Memphis, right? Memphis is the 8 seed. Portland right now is 3.5 games back. When they come back, I believe they play 8 games. The teams play 8 games when they come back. Portland could look very different when they come back. Yusuf Nurkic could play for them, which makes them a very different team than they were prior to. That is a level of advantage, right? Should they get hot and Dame goes berserk for 2 games, they could knock the Grizzlies out in a play-in style tournament or something like that. Is that fair to the Grizzlies when they had all season to play well, which they had been, and now they get to have their season preempted and cut short because of this new play-in wonky format? Again, the percentages and likelihood of that happening are slim, but if I'm the Grizzlies, I kind of feel a little bit kind of way about it. Like, yo, what's up with that? But again, as the rules go, if the 8 seed is up by 4 games or more, they earn the final spot. And as I said, right now they're 3.5 games up. So all the Grizzlies have to do is play their games, play well, and they'll be fine. Now, the Grizzlies do have among the hardest schedule of the teams that when they come back. So that's going to be a little tough for them. But, look, young guys, we know Triple J and John Morant, Triple J, who gets on this podcast. Shout out to him. We believe in those guys. And look, selfishly, I want to see Memphis in the playoffs. Like, sorry, Portland. I've seen you in the playoffs, Portland. Like, I'm good. Like, I want to see these young guys. Yeah,
they were the only team that didn't vote to go back.
Who didn't?
Portland.
Yeah.
29-1.
Right. Exactly. And so, look, the Memphis is going to play the Lakers in round 1 but likely get swept. That's fine. They're young guys. They got to get their lumps. But I want to see these young guys play in the playoffs because, as we know, John Morant and Triple J got no back down in them. They're like, okay, cool. LeBron and AD are good, but we ain't scared. Like, we're going to go out and compete, and we'll see what happens. And they'll believe they can win. And that's what I want to see. So I'm, in terms of the basketball, I'm excited about that and the games and everything coming back. In the back of my head, I'm going to be a little bit like, okay. It's kind of like when all the concussion stuff was coming out in the NFL and you would still turn on your TV on Sundays and you'd watch kids and be like, oh, you feel kind of funny watching it. Like, oh, that's not exactly good. It might be something similar like that for some of you. I'll definitely feel that for a bit. And it's really just about, again, the safety of not just the players. Of course, that's important, paramount, but the coaches, officials, everyone else who's in and around the arena or excuse me, the bubble.
Yeah. And they're reportedly allowed to bring a certain amount of family members with them as well. And of course, all these guys have young children, they have wives and things like that. And then you have the younger guys who may bring their parents or whoever is, special to them in their lives. So
imports.
You never know, Gerard. And I'm sure those imports are a little concerned as well as to how they're going to get there. I'd be like, hey, are you sending the jet? Or it's too much. It's too much. I mean, honestly, it's going to be interesting, though, to see, especially with these young players, how they adapt to this new style of play with no fans and things like that. And of course, it's going to be an adaptation for everyone. But, you know, your veterans like LeBron and everyone, they can lock in. These young guys have never experienced this before. So that's going to be interesting. And I'm also interested to see how these guys come back in the form that they're in, because let's not forget, they had weeks by themselves. So I want to see how they utilize their time.
Well, and that's the big reason why they're having training camp, right? Because you can't come back and just be like, cool, we're starting the playoffs. Like, hell no. Like, a bunch of these guys haven't dribbled the ball in months, right? Contrary to popular belief, every NBA player does not have a private basketball court and gym in their house. Like, only a handful of guys have that, number one. Number two, a lot of these guys live in condos and apartment complexes in these cities. Like, that's not, so it's not something that they actually have at their disposal. So again, it'll be interesting to see who used their time wisely and who did not, right, during this layoff. But again, from one standpoint, it is exciting to see basketball back. On the other hand, you know, there's some trepidation there.
Right, especially with everything going on in the world, and the NBA and its players have been extremely vocal between protests, social media, and different things like that. So that is incredible to see as well. And they're also dealing with these things too. So this is a huge mental aspect and a mental test for them.
We would be remiss as a podcast if we didn't talk about what's going on in the world. And look,
100%.
We know what's happening, right? George Floyd is just the latest. Breonna Taylor is just the latest. Ahmaud Arbery is just the latest. This has been happening for 400 plus years. August of 1619. For those of you that don't know what that is, look it up, go do your homework and go do your research. At this stage of the game, though, if you don't know what that is, like, I don't know where you've been. Like, Google exists, people. August of 1619 was the date the first slave ship hit the shores of this country, right? And from that time to now, this is what has been happening to Black people in America, right? State-sanctioned violence and murder. That's what's happening. And it's happening again and again and again. And for these NBA players, it's so important for them because if not for basketball, if not for something else, they could be one of these people, right? I could be one of these people. This is the reality of the world that we live in. And if you don't see that, you're burying your head in the sand. And honestly, I don't have time to engage you in that conversation. I mean, look at the Milwaukee Bucks, Sterling Brown. He obviously didn't get killed, but for a simple minor parking infraction, got tased by the Milwaukee Cops. Like, what are we talking about here? This is the reality. And NBA players have been vocal. LeBron, Jaylen Brown went down to Atlanta leading protests. Malcolm Brogdon. I mean, these guys are speaking up and speaking out because they are these people. Again, if not for basketball, if not for the grace of God, and they all know it. They all have stories. This could easily be me. And it's heartbreaking what's happening. And again, I feel like we're at a moment because you're seeing people of all ethnicities standing up and being like, wait a minute, this ain't right. Like, and it's not right. And I do hope that it is something that is a moment where we can spark change. And I hope that the NBA players take this as an opportunity when they're down in Orlando in the bubble to use it to continue to amplify the message. All eyes are going to be on them as it usually is. In those off days, hey, guess what? Have discussions, have protests, whatever. Be out there. I'm down for that. Let the people who are going to be watching NBA basketball see, this basketball is important, and we're going to do what we got to do and play hard, but also this life and this world is important, and we're going to talk about that too. And I think it is a perfect opportunity for the players to really step up and do something, and I have a feeling they will.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you put it perfectly. And just to add to that, you know, during this time, I've educated myself as well, and I still am every single day. I've donated, I've spoken out as well, and I've even had conversations with a lot of my Black friends, and I've said I will never pretend to know what it's like to be judged by the color of my skin, but I will certainly continue to stand by you as an ally, including yourself, Sherrod. And the guests that we have come on this podcast here in and out, you've all taught me so much. So we support, I stand by you guys, and we are going to continue to educate ourselves and fight the good fight for what's right.
And we appreciate that. And look, and that's what it's going to take, right? It's going to take a collective we. Like, the reality of it is that we, the body politic, the citizens of this country, we are the many. The ruling class and the people in authority are the few. What that means is we are the ones that actually hold the power. And when we recognize that and collectively come together, that's how we can actually enact change, holding these politicians responsible and accountable for what they say. Oh, you said you're going to do something on bail reform? You've been in office 2 years. I ain't seen nothing. We're not reelecting you. You've got to put the pressure, right? It's not, right. It's everything. It's protesting. It's voting. It's holding them accountable. It's educating. It's doing all of these things in tandem, not just for a month and okay, I'm done. No. It's continuous. That's what it means to be a functioning member of a civilized society. And if we can all do that, we'll be in a much better place.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's not just for a few weeks. It goes beyond the news cycle. And we are going to continue to remind our listeners of this day in and day out when we record, and keep you guys posted on the news infiltrating with this subject along with the league. And like we said, we're going to keep it going. We're not going to stop, and we have a lot to do.
Absolutely. And I'm going to we'll have in a liner notes for today's episode. We'll put some organizations that you can learn information from, some history and some books and yes. different forms of medium. If you guys want to understand a little bit more of how we as a nation got here and why this is all connected. And, I always talk about the economics, and that's the thing that people often lose sight of. The economics is the big connector. It matters. The economics connect to what you're seeing in the streets, and different organizations where you can donate to bail reform funds and things of that nature. So we'll continue to do that. And look, we're going to keep monitoring this situation, right? The NBA, it's not even looks like they are. Like the Board of Governors, the NBPA, the players, they voted. So that we're coming back. Now let's wait and see how it all shakes out.
Absolutely. And guys, we'll be seeing you guys, and you'll be hearing us more frequently as the NBA returns. And we have some fun things cooking for you. Gerard and I are going to sit down and really dive back into the league's new normal. So keep with us. We are with you guys, and always reach out if you need anything from us. We got your back. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Where can they find us, Gerard?
No doubt. They can find us on Twitter at 7footerspod, on Instagram at 7footerspodcast, at JS Hector, at Jenna Lemoncelli. And like we said, we're going to keep this content rolling. We're going to look into different things that's going on right now. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks really going to win the NBA title. They just might. I don't know.
Or are the Lakers going to win?
Oh, Lord. You and your LeBron. Here we go. We'll see. Hey. We'll see. I mean, those Clippers, listen, those Clippers are looking pretty tough.
And you let Kawhi rest for this long?
Look out for the claw, folks. But yeah, we'll get into all that. And as always, thanks for rocking with us. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Peace.
Spent a couple years out here with these raps, trying to have a plan that we made come true. Applied to some jobs, but I ain't hit back. I don't wanna trap, what's a man gon' do? Chevy told me come